Hello everyone, this is Jason from Primetime Aquatics, and today we're going to be bringing you a fish that we think is really awesome, and that is Geophagus tapajos. It's a great Geophagus with lots of color, great personality. I think you're going to like it, so stay tuned. All right, so what we're looking at here is a 55-gallon. We've got 4 Geophagus tapajos in this tank. The ratio is not the best. We got these fish when they were young, and it turns out it looks like we've got 3 males and a female. I would prefer that ratio to be flipped, but they're working out okay. And so these fish come from the Rio Tapajos in eastern Brazil. That water tends to be relatively soft, neutral to slightly acidic depending on the collection point. And these fish have been found in black water environments. They've been found in relatively clear environments. So there is a little bit of difference depending on the collection point. Now, for these guys, they're going to get about 5 to 6 inches or so. They're not quite full grown, but they're getting pretty close. You can see the coloration is pretty awesome. Both the males and the females demonstrate really nice color, and I think that's one of the reasons why I like the Geophagus, because almost in every case the females look almost as nice as the males do. And you can see here we've got some nice color in the finnage, and there's a female there, and there really isn't much of a difference. As they grow older, the males are going to get more fin extensions. The color is going to be a little bit better. The top of their head is going to be a little bit more red in this particular line, but by and large both the males and females look really nice. In terms of their temperament, they're relatively peaceful. The males will sometimes spar for females and for territory. In this particular instance, there are some eggs on the top of this slate, so we're seeing more aggression from these fish than we would normally see, but their temperament for a South American cichlid isn't too bad, and because of that, you have to choose your tank mates wisely. I personally don't think I would mix these with things like Jack Dempsey's, convicts. They might be a little bit rough, although I'm sure people have had some success. If it were me and I were going to be putting other fish in this tank, I might try some larger tetras that are something that maybe these fish aren't going to be able to eat. I've had them in with gouramis, severums, even severums sometimes, at least in my experience. They tend to rule the tank over the Geophagus in almost every case. Keyhole Cichlids, electric blue acaras might be a nice mix with these guys. Curviceps, I've got them in right now with some bristlenose. I've had them in with cory cats before. You just have to be careful that any fish you mix them with aren't going to be nipping at the fins and being an aggressor, because one of the primary benefits of having these fish are the awesome fins. And again, as they get older, the trailers on the tail fins, on the dorsal fin, they're going to get a lot nicer. So it doesn't make any sense to keep these and have another fish in there kind of rip those apart. So again, tank mates, just make sure they're not overly aggressive. Now, the way we've been keeping this fish is our room is around 77 to 78 degrees, and that's been more than sufficient for them. Although sometimes you may want to raise that temperature for breeding purposes up to 80, low 80s. pH, again, in nature, the pH is going to be closer, neutral or slightly acidic, but for us, our natural water is right around a 7.8. And with that 7.8, we've been getting breeding behavior. They've been doing great. We've been getting eggs. So you can breed them in slightly higher, at least we can breed them in slightly higher pHs. Water hardness for us, once again, is right around 200 total dissolved solids. So again, that's slightly harder water. In nature, it would be slightly softer. But again, I'm not saying necessarily you're going to be able to breed these fish with the same water parameters and have success. But what I am saying is that we have had success with parameters that are would be considered to be slightly out of the normal range that these fish are found in. Water quality, we definitely want to keep our water quality up with these fish. We tend to have nitrates in the 20-ish parts per million range, and so that's ideal. In terms of food, they're really easy to feed, and I found most Geophagus are relatively easy to feed. We've been giving these guys micro pellets. I like to use smaller pellets because they sink into the sand and they like to sift through that sand. And so the micro pellets are something I think more natural for them to eat. But we use micro pellets. We use a lot of flake food, frozen bloodworms, frozen brine shrimp. They seem to eat just about anything we put in the tank, which makes it easier. Tank size right now, as we're looking at this video, it is a 55-gallon. I would say for the number of fish we have, this is probably close to the minimum. I think a better option would be a 75 or even larger. They don't get overly, huge at 5 to 6 inches, but I think these fish would be pretty awesome in a larger tank. If I just had one male and one female, could you pull it off breeding? If my goal was to breed, I could probably pull that off in a 40-gallon breeder. But I think this is probably the minimum at which I would keep these fish. Now, in terms of decorations, this tank is not set up to be some awesome looking display tank. It really is for the fish to breed, and because of that, I'll probably move the male and the female into their own tank and then do something with the other two males. But right now, you see there's some terracotta pots, some fake plants, and some slate, and that's about it. If I were setting this up more as a biotope or a display tank, I would definitely add some driftwood. Live plants may be an issue. These guys love to dig through substrate, and so that can make live plants sometimes problematic unless you pot them and then just kind of leave the pots in the tank. But they will dig huge mounds out. They will dig pits, and it makes, in some cases it may make live plants a little bit difficult. So rock work, driftwood, definitely something to consider when keeping these fish. Now, for breeding, as I've already said, for the breeding side of it, we haven't done anything special with our water, and that's just the way we do things. And so ideally, you'd probably want to be close to neutral, maybe slightly acidic. So if that's your natural water parameters, congratulations, you've got water these fish would probably enjoy. But for us, we're at 7-8 for a pH and a TDS of 200, and it's been working out okay. Even at 78 degrees, we're seeing the breeding behavior, we're seeing eggs. Again, what we're looking at here, those eggs there are fungus. I purposely left them in the tank because I only took the ones I thought were going to be viable, and I put those in an egg tumbler. Now, if you were going to allow this process to happen naturally, the mating process, they first lay the eggs on a surface, and I have seen them lay eggs on this slate, which they're currently guarding. I have seen them lay eggs in the terracotta pot off onto our right-hand side, and they've done both. So they're not super picky about where they lay the eggs. They're going to leave them out for about a couple days, and then eventually, as they start to become a little bit more active and get closer to that hatching time, both the male and the female may take those eggs and incubate them in their mouth, and then the fry, they will incubate those as well. And it's going to take about a week, maybe even 2, depending on temperature and other parameters, for them to become free swimming. And once they do, they will release the fry, and the parents will sometimes eat, and then if there's any type of threat to the tank, then they will go ahead and pull those fry back into their mouth. So that's kind of how they care for them. I tend to just pull the eggs and tumble them, really because of 2 things. One, we've got bristlenose in here, and we've got the other males. And bristlenose, as we know, sometimes can sneak in and start eating the eggs. So that's the reason why I've been pulling them. The fry are relatively easy to care for, as are almost all Geophagus fry that we've had. They take readily to live baby brine shrimp, and then usually within a couple weeks or so, I will start transitioning them to crushed flake foods and micro pellets, and I've never had an issue doing that with any of the fry of any of the Geophagus that we have raised. So these are awesome fish, great color, great personality. They don't get overly aggressive. They don't get super huge like some of the other Geophagus do, but they have a lot of nice color. All right, everyone, so that was Geophagus tapajos. It's a great fish. Awesome color, awesome personality. I hope you enjoyed it. So if you liked this video, share, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.